Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is the head football coach of the University of Rochester, Chad Martinovich. Before we get into his story, we're going to do what we've done every week, where we tell you about the university, a little bit about the University of Rochester. It's in Rochester, New York, has about 6,700 students. The acceptance rate is 39%. The graduation rate is 87%. The cost is roughly about $31,000. The top three majors are registered nursing, management, sciences, and quantitative methods, and biology. Not to discredit the biology people, they just have a very easy one, so I wanted to get it out there. On the football team alone, and this is a big thing for Rochester, is they're a national university, they recruit nationally. On the football team alone, there's 25 different states represented, and when I talked to Coach about what the significance of that was, he says how you're not going to feel out of place because of the amount of people that are coming from all over the place. That being said, it's University of Rochester football program and Coach Chad Martinovich's week to tell us about themselves. So without further ado, this is Coach. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach of the University of Rochester, Chad Martinovich. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Carlo.
Absolutely. Coach, I'm going to do this the same way I do every week. I'm going to throw you in a time machine. We're going to go back to your playing days and recruitment days, and we're going to work our way to today. So explain to me how you found yourself at Hobart.
Well, that was before the internet and cell phones. So growing up in the northeast part of New York State, there weren't a lot of colleges looking up in that part of the state. So I had very few schools recruiting me. And bottom line, Hobart gave me the best financial aid package. So I decided to head there for 4 years. And here I am.
So once you're done with your time at Hobart, did you know that you wanted to get into coaching? Was that always kind of the goal, or did it kind of come up as you finished up your senior year?
It actually came up as I finished my senior year. I had planned on going to law school. I had taken the LSATs. My mother always told me I argued very well and should go be a lawyer. My dad was a high school football coach, so I guess he won. I finished my senior season and realized I didn't want to give up football and definitely wasn't good enough to play on Sundays. So I sat down with my head coach at the time, Bill Maxwell, God rest his soul, and he proceeded to call everybody he knew in the business and found me my first opportunity at Bucknell University.
And what was the biggest difference from wearing the pads on Saturday to becoming the guy calling the plays, working with players, being the guy in the khakis on the sideline?
I don't think as a player I understood everything that went into the preparation of every facet of coaching. So that was an eye-opener, making that transition from being a player to being a coach. I understood watching film and understanding scout reports and game plans, but just the hours and the logistics involved in planning practices, planning meetings, in addition to scout reports and game plans and everything. So those first 5 years of coaching really opened my eyes to what it was all about. And you definitely don't get in this business for the money. And I figured out that I loved what I was doing and just had to figure out how to make a living doing it.
So after the first year at Bucknell, why the decision to move on to Hamilton College?
The head coach got fired. So my first position, I figured out or experienced what a lot of colleges or a lot of coaches go through at some point during their career. You're part of a staff that gets let go. It just happened to be my first year of coaching. So back then, sent my resume out to wherever I heard there was an opening, and was fortunate to get an intern position at Hamilton.
Now, how has that process changed from when you were early on in your career to now? Obviously, the internet helps that a lot. It's, there's a website that they post all those jobs, but is there still that same network where, if an assistant coach from a staff gets let go, or the whole staff gets let go, maybe you have a connection with an assistant coach or somebody that's working with them. Is that does that network still happen where you guys are reaching out to certain guys or former players?
The networking definitely still happens. I think you can see things open in almost real time now with the internet. Back then, before the internet, it was, all right, who do I know and who do they know, and what do they know is open right now. There was a lot more interaction on the phone, or I was writing letters and sending actual resumes through the mail, and things that happen a lot quicker now than back then.
Coach,
But
so
it's crucial to have a network and build your network and stay in touch with everybody in your network. Just like it was back then, it stays true now.
So after your time at Hamilton, you end up at the University of Albany, and you pursue your master's degree there. Why the decision to pursue the next level of education?
Well, it was impressed upon me at a pretty early stage of coaching that you needed a master's degree to eventually become a full-time coach or a head coach. And Bob Ford, who was the head coach at UAlbany at the time, is and was a legend. And he had such a vast coaching tree of guys that had been graduate assistants for him and moved on to all sorts of different positions throughout football. So it was a tremendous opportunity and tremendous learning experience. And it was a great network to be a part of and grow in, and happen to be able to get my master's degree too.
Now, at this point in your career, what are the goal is to be an offensive coordinator and then move into a head coaching job, or were you looking at the defensive side too?
Well, actually at Bucknell and at Hamilton, I was on the defensive side and then moved to offense when I went to UAlbany. I was an offensive player. I think at that point, I just wanted to grow in coaching and eventually become a coordinator on either side of the ball. Leaving Albany, having that offensive experience, led to my first coordinator position as an offensive coordinator. But I've coordinated on both sides of the ball leading up to becoming a head coach. So, the ultimate goal was to become a head coach at some level. And eventually that played out pretty well too.
So, as you said, you get the offensive experience, and then you move on to, and I want to make sure I get this right, Swarthmore
College, when they had football, it was at the time was the #1 liberal arts school in the nation. We played in the Centennial Conference with Johns Hopkins and Muhlenberg and those schools. I was there for 3 years. Was out on the road recruiting one day and got a phone call from the head coach, said, you got to get back here now. And I was up in New England or someplace. He's like, it's not good. Come back right now. Got back in the office because, again, this was before cell phones. So got a message from him, came back to the office, and they had dropped the football program. Looking for another job at that point. And the head coach there ended up taking the Hamilton College head coaching job, and I made the trip back up to Clinton with him.
Now, what was the biggest change from your original stop at Hamilton to this second stop?
Minus being a coordinator, because I know there was a position difference.
I was wet behind the ears, young kid in my second year of coaching. The first time I was there, coaching outside linebackers on defense and just trying to learn as much as I can and grow in the profession. The second time around, I definitely didn't know everything, but I'd switched sides of the ball and was an offensive coordinator. The program was different than when I was there the first time. I hadn't had as much success. So we were more in a rebuilding mode. The first time I was there, they were winning a decent amount. The head coach had been there for a while, and then it dropped off a little bit with a couple of coaching turnovers at that point. So we were in a rebuilding mode, and the NESCAC was becoming the NESCAC in terms of that academic prestige and national recruiting and so on that conference has taken on.
Now, not to get ahead of myself, but with all of the stops that you've had and the areas that you've recruited, do those channels stay open as well now that you're at Rochester? You're looking at can you maybe pull a kid that you were from a school that you recruited from when you were at Hamilton or when you were at Bucknell or?
Absolutely. I think early in my career, I was at schools where you were recruiting a little closer to home. At Hamilton, it was more national, but it was all phone calls. The NESCAC can't go out on the road recruiting other than summer camps. But especially having been at MIT for 9 years, where we are recruiting all over the country, it was one of the reasons why the athletic director here at the University of Rochester kind of recruited me to take this position is the national recruiting background. This is a nationally known academic institution. If you walk around this particular campus, you're going to run into students from all over the country and all over the world. And we needed to grow the national footprint on this roster. Now we have 25 different states represented on our roster. And yeah, a lot of that is connections I made over the years, both at MIT and some of the other spots. And also hiring assistant coaches that had connections in certain areas of the country too was important.
Now, to bring you back onto where we are in the timeline. So you finish up at Hamilton in 2004 and you move on to an offensive coordinator / also doing the defensive coordinator stuff at your time with your time there 5 years. Why was RPI the next step?
RPI had just come off a Final Four appearance. The Hamilton, you can go to the national playoffs, being a NESCAC school. So it was appealing to be able to be at a school that could go to the national playoffs. Originally was hired to be the offensive coordinator. Then the head coach decided he wanted to kind of reshuffle the full-time assistants. And he knew that one of my goals was to become a head coach, and said, listen, I'll give you the defense. I know this will put you in a better position to be hired as a head coach, having the experience of coordinating on both sides of the ball. And, it was a great opportunity at the time, and it turned out to be a pretty beneficial opportunity. So I was the offensive coordinator for that 1 year, and then the next 4 years was a defensive coordinator. And, we went to the national playoffs and went to a few ECAC bowl games and had some pretty good success on defense along the way.
Now, does that give you a different perspective when you become a head coach, that you've now been you've been a coordinator on both sides of the ball?
Absolutely. If I could give any advice to any assistant coach, if you have the opportunity to coach on the other side of the ball, it gives you a lot of perspective in terms of what is happening on the other side of the ball from a coordinator perspective, understanding what the opposite side of the ball's coordinator thinks and does and how they go about things. And then becoming a head coach, whether you're coordinating on one side or not, you having been in the shoes of both coordinators, you can really relate to what they're going through, be able to chime in and actually speak from experience rather than, this is just the head guy telling you what he wants to see, and give them rhyme and reason why, we should do this, or we should look at doing this, or changing this, that, and the other, if that makes sense.
Makes sense perfectly. So as you were talking about, the coach at RPI told you that the 1 year and then the 4 years was going to boost that resume a little bit, get you to that next spot. The next spot is a 9-year stop at MIT. And I will say this, Coach, it really seems that the academic schools are the top academic schools that you've stopped at here. Why was MIT such a good fit for you?
I think, first of all, coming from an engineering school, I think maybe that background appealed to what they were looking for, somebody that could relate to those students. Now, MIT is a different place. The players and the students there are tremendous. The people there are tremendous, but it is different from any other university I've been at. There are so many challenges for those student athletes in terms of the academic rigor and the time they have to put into things. So you really have to be creative to be able to put them in a position to be successful on Saturdays in the limited amount of time you get with them during the week. It was trial and error. Mm-hmm. We didn't have much success at the start. The previous head coach there had been there for 30 years, was there when it was a club program, and their approach to recruiting wasn't quite what I was used to. So I had to help educate everybody that had any kind of relationship with the program of what the needs of a college football program really were in order to help us become competitive. And it took time. It took building relationships like any place, and eventually we got it going pretty good there.
Now, what you touched on a little bit. You were kind of recruited in a way for the job you have now. What pulled you away from 9 years at MIT?
Oh, maybe a new challenge. Okay. So after my last season at MIT, the athletic director here at the U of R called me and said, if I drive out to Boston, will you have breakfast with me? I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to turn down a free meal. By the end of that conversation, he made it pretty clear that they had a very significant interest in me, and kind of laid out the changes that they had made from a facility standpoint here, and the things that they want to do to enhance the football program and get it back to what it once was. This place had a tradition of being very successful in the 80s and 90s. And so after having a conversation with my wife and kids, we decided to take a hard look. And ultimately, it was a lower cost of living, higher quality of life for the entire family. Didn't have to deal with Boston traffic. And the cost of living in Rochester, New York is a little different than Boston. But yet it's a great city with all the restaurants and culture that Boston had. So ultimately it was the right step in a really strong conference, where if you win this conference, you got a shot at making a lot of noise in the national playoffs.
Now, Coach, for those that aren't familiar, give us a little bit of info on Rochester as a whole. What is it about the area that, like you said, they got a cultural district, they got things, restaurants and such, just like Boston. So what is it about the town of Rochester?
Well, the city of Rochester is the third largest city in New York State.
Wow.
So the population is pretty good size. We're right on Lake Ontario, right in the middle of the Finger Lakes. So there's a ton to do in the warm months, and there's a couple of minor league professional sports teams, a lot of different colleges and universities in this area. Both my wife and I are originally from New York State, so I was kind of getting back home a little bit. But this is just a great place to raise a family. The airport's 5 minutes from campus, so from a recruiting standpoint, and if we're a national recruiting school, so having kids be able to fly in and be 5 minutes from campus rather than have to drive an hour plus from an airport is a bonus and a big selling point. So we have a lot to offer here as a city, and the university is very unique. It's a tier 1 research institution. We're a little bit bigger than a lot of Division III schools. We have 6,500 undergraduate students, another 5,500 graduate students. There's a lot of great majors here. We have a medical center right on campus, so the pre-med kids kind of have a leg up on things. Great school of engineering, great school of business. You name it, and we have it. So you can cater to a lot of different kids, and in the end, it's one great community. The University of Rochester is the largest employer north of New York City and New York State, so employs over 30,000 people with all the hospitals and labs and urgent cares and so on. It's been ranked the #1 employer in New York State, or at least upstate New York, for over 12 years now. So it's a great place to work and live.
Now, Coach, 2 years into your start here at the U of R, that we all kind of, and it's this week, we all kind of went through a whole shutdown period where it was different than anything anybody's been through. There's nobody you could call and say, "Hey, how did you deal with it?" What was practicing like? What was the Liberty League's response as you guys worked through it? How did that process go?
A lot of indecision and a lot of unknowns at the beginning of COVID. Again, talking about having the medical center here, we had doctors consulting with our athletic department that were a little bit more in the know than most universities. So they were helping us as a university find ways to do things rather than saying, no, you can't do things. So we were able, and it was extremely structured and a lot of logistics involved, but we were able to practice all through COVID, that whole fall semester. We had all of our students that wanted to be on campus. So the majority of our roster was on campus, and it allowed us to basically have, especially taking over a program and rebuilding, it gave us kind of a development year. A lot of our current seniors right now, who just finished up their senior season, they still have the COVID year next year. That was their freshman year. So they had kind of a full fall of just practicing and understanding our system and getting used to all the things that are involved with being a college football player. So we looked at it as a positive. It's the only way you could look at it, rather than feeling sorry for ourselves. And while we did talk to a bunch of other staffs to see what they're doing, everybody was kind of trading ideas, but nobody had the same rules that they were following. It was basically university by university. And so I was checking more with our sports medicine people to see what, the higher ups on the medical side were telling us we couldn't do. So a lot of times it was a numbers thing. Well, you can have, 15 people in this area
on that side.
So we got creative, and we tried to keep our guys engaged. It was hard for them. A lot of them were taking Zoom classes from their dorm rooms to be on campus. So a lot of the only interaction they had with other human beings was at practice every day. And So, we tried to make it fun and get them better as players. And a lot of the kids that were freshmen that year ended up being 3-year starters coming out of that. And several of them are coming back next year for a 5th year. And so it's paid off in the long run. But, it was hard at the time. I think it made a lot of us much stronger coming out of it.
Now, Coach, if you can put us as a fly on the wall when you're talking to parents or recruits, minus the guy got to be able to play football. What are you looking for in a player, and what are you talking to those parents about to make them understand that, for the next 4 years, your kid's he's in good hands?
Well, we first talked to them about what it means to be a Rochester guy, if you will. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, they need to want this type of degree and this type of education. So there's a lot of academic rigor here. There are no, easy majors. We have the STEM majors, and then we have the non-lab-based majors. So it really depends on what they want. But I think we have a little something for most kids. But at the same time, we're a top 30 academic institution. So the second thing would be they better want to be challenged, because they're going to get challenged on the football field from us as a staff. They're going to get challenged in the weight room. They're going to get challenged in the meeting room, but they're also going to get challenged in the classroom on a daily basis with the classes they take and the labs they take. And they're going to get challenged socially to become better people. So if you want to challenge, again, this might be a fit for you as a recruit. And then finally, they have to want to be a part of what we're building here, which is something pretty special. We have a very, very family-oriented program, and that's not lip service. I know a lot of people talk about building a family, but we really put a lot of time into making sure that our guys grow as people off the field. We probably spend more time with our players off the field than we do on. And I say this to parents and recruits. I guarantee you this: if you're a part of our program for 4 years, you won't walk away and say, boy, I wish somebody would have taken an interest in me, because we're going to take an interest in every aspect of your life, maybe more than you want at times, but that's the only way I know to go about it. I'm going to treat our players like I want my son to be treated when he goes on to play college football, which ironically is going to be next fall. So we really take a great interest in the person, not just the player.
If I can ask, where's your son going next year?
He signed on early signing day with Merrimack College in Massachusetts.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And we're excited for him.
So, Coach, let's jump into 2023. 5-5 overall, 2-4 in the conference, 5th in the Liberty League. Talk to us about what now that the dust is settled and you can look back on it and move forward. What's the takeaway?
We took a step forward as a program. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're closer than we've ever been. We expect to take a big step this season. We lost a couple of conference games that we were right there at the end and let them slip away. And that's something from my experience, especially at MIT, kind of going through a rebuild there, these kids needed to experience. It was the parallels between building the program at MIT and rebuilding the program here are very, very similar. Using the same blueprint. Like I said, that we've really worked hard recruiting and building our culture and really developing the young men in this program to the point now where I think we have the talent and depth heading into this next season that we can compete with anybody in the Liberty League, and hopefully we'll be playing for a conference championship. So I'm excited about where we're headed. I think that's why so many of our current seniors are coming back. I think we got looks like maybe 7 returning starters that were seniors are coming back for their 5th year. And we should have just about everybody back on both sides of the ball this year. We got a really strong class coming in, and some young guys that I think are going to break through this year that were freshmen and sophomores for us this past year. So the future is very bright. We have some of the best facilities in Division III athletics, and a great degree to sell the kids. So I'm looking forward to what not only this year but the coming years.
So, Coach, these next couple questions are a little bit more broad.
Sure.
One, with 2020, the 2024 and 2025 seasons in the near future, there's a projection or a proposal that we're going to expand the playoffs to 40 teams. I've spoken to every coach so far this season about that expansion idea. Most people seem to be on board with the 40. I heard a couple coaches say 36. Where do you fall on that? And is it just time to expand based off of the amount of schools that we have and the amount of teams that get in currently, which I believe is 32?
I think it's time to expand. The reasoning behind it is equity. You look at opportunities that other sports have, and with their national playoffs, football is actually being shortchanged in terms of the number of opportunities schools have to get into the national playoffs. So it makes sense from that standpoint, which is why I hope it does pass. So we're going to see what happens, but yeah, I'm all for expansion and giving more schools opportunities to play in the national tournament. Having been at a few schools now that have had that opportunity, it's a great experience, especially at this level where kids aren't on scholarship. So it means a lot when you put in all that time and effort, especially at an academic school like this. To see it pay off for those kids, it's something that I want our guys to be able to experience on a regular basis.
And then do you also think that with the expansion of the playoffs, will we see more bowl games popping up? I've seen a couple conferences have agreed to at least play an 11th game. I think it's how that falls. Do you think that'll expand as we move down the line, as the same way? It's more exposure, more equity.
I hope so. I think the Division III bowl games, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a little bit of a Northeast thing.
Yeah.
So they've been going on in the Northeast for quite some time. I think it's now trickling into other parts of the country with other conferences. I think it's a great thing. These kids only get 10 opportunities in the regular season, some less than that. So to give them more opportunities to play this game, this is the only sport that really has an expiration date. If you play basketball, you can always play pickup hoops. If you play baseball, you can always play in a beer league. But once you're done with 11-on-11 full contact after college, there's not a lot of opportunities for game day Saturdays. So to give these kids more opportunities to do that and grow our sport and strengthen it even more, I'm all for it.
And then, you talked about the fact that you guys specifically 6,500 students undergrad, 5,500, another 5,500 on the graduate side. Do you guys look at the transfer portal at all? Is that something that has it trickled down to D3 the way that we hear about it in D1 and D2, where it's a glorified free agency, or is it more those guys that are in there for the Division III schools are looking specifically for a specific school or a specific kind of school?
With us, because of the type of academic school we are, it's more about fit that way, in addition to helping us from a football standpoint. We've had transfers. Right now we have a couple grad transfers coming in this fall. It's more specifically that they have an interest in what we have to offer here academically, and it happens to be a fit, and they can help us on the field too. This is not a school or a program where we're going to be shopping heavily in the portal. I can't speak to other Division III programs and how they're going about things. I like to bring in about the same size class every year and help develop those kids to build our roster and help us grow. But if the right transfer comes along, whether it's an undergraduate transfer or grad transfer that can help our program, we vet those individuals, and if they're a fit and it works out, great. But it's not something that we make a big living on right now.
Coach, what's the significance of Division III in your eyes?
That's an excellent question, Carlo. The significance, I think this might be college football at its purest right now. It's pure competition. It's not. You hear so much on the national news about NIL and the business of college football. That's not what Division III is about. It's where athletes are truly student athletes, and in places like the U of R, they're coming here first and foremost for the education and also the opportunity to play 4 more years of football. Will we have kids eventually that go on to play in the league? Yeah, maybe. You see Division III kids here and there, but usually if you're going to a Division III school, it's your last 4 years or 5 years, depending on, injury or whatever. And I think that the significance of that is it embraces college football and how a lot of people would at least like to think of it. So
makes sense. I've heard other coaches say it's the volunteer army and not the, you're the volunteer army. You're not required to be here type thing. So that's the gist of my opinion. Is the importance is that it's the purest form of football. There's no scholarships. There's not really
the kids that are on our roster need to love doing this.
Yeah,
because there's not a scholarship or anything else on the line for them. They're doing it because they love playing football. And that makes it fun to come to work every day.
All right, Coach, this part has nothing to do with football. It's just about you. So if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Right now, I want to be where I'm at because I'm not done what I'm doing.
Okay.
That makes sense.
What's the most important lesson that you've learned over your career?
Listen, double what you talk.
Okay.
I think as a younger coach, I think I wanted to prove to people what I knew. Learn a lot more by listening. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
I knew it was coming. I saw it as it was getting ready. I knew.
Yeah, I was building for that.
Yeah. Coach, if you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
That's a good question. My answer 30 years ago would have been different than what it is now.
30 years ago, a lawyer, right?
Or even 20 years ago. I mean, back then I was thinking about going into law. Now I wouldn't be a lawyer. I don't know. I'm closer to retirement than the beginning of my career. Believe me, I'm probably going to end up dying on the sideline. So I can think about a retirement job if I ever get there. It would be, I don't know, bartending on an island somewhere. Maybe.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Jimmy Buffett
owning
would
an
approve of that.
establishment on some island in the Caribbean.
And then this is a two-parter. Best compliment you've ever received.
Coach, you made me better.
And then on the other side of compliments, best insult you've ever received.
Wow. You hear a lot of those. So insults. Oh man, I don't know. More threats than anything. I don't know if I've, everybody's a armchair quarterback. So
everybody wants to call it from up in the.
Probably best person to ask on that would probably be my wife, who has to listen to what's said from the stands all these years.
And then my last question on that part is, where'd you meet your wife?
When I was a graduate assistant at UAlbany, actually.
Okay. And then our final question, it's kind of, I put you in the seat for this, in the driver's seat for this one. Was there a question you were expecting me to ask? And if so, how would you have answered it?
I actually came into this with an open mind, so I didn't expect any random questions. Is there one that you still got in your pocket that you want to throw at me?
No. I had a couple that I was there's a couple up here that could come out, but I don't know how to ask them, and they're not on my sheet. And sometimes that gets me in trouble. It's got me in trouble in the past. So I'm trying to learn from my mistakes. Well, Coach, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us. For those of you that are sticking around, you know what comes up next. It's Overtime with Serenity Brown, where I have no idea what part of football we're going to be trying to teach her this week. We're trying to get her prepped for the season so that when we predict games, she doesn't just go and point at a school. She actually understands what's going on. She's doing great. We got her through the offense. We got her through defense and special teams. We're working on penalties now. She's not a big fan of holding, pass interference, pretty much all the penalties that make a coach pull his hair out that aren't the blatant, just you could call it on every play if you want to. That doesn't sit well with her. So we're trying to get through that process. But again, Coach, thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.